This week I want to talk to you about building character through Bible characters. When you study a Bible character, what are you looking for? Well, a lot of people say, well, I'm looking for a real interesting story, and many of them really are. But you ought to be, each of us needs to ask ourselves, what can I learn from that Bible character? What is there in their life that will help me, or the things I should do, the things I should not do? And that's what we'll be doing this week, is looking at various characters. Building character through Bible characters. Well, I want to ask a question though. What is character? Have you ever thought about that? What is your character? One way to look at it is to understand that all of us have three persons within our one person. The one person is who you think you are. And that's your ego, your I go. You know, the Greeks had a word, ego, which means I am, which meant I am this and this and this. So the first person is the person you think you are, your ego. Then there's the person that others think you are, and that's your reputation. And sometimes these are not in agreement, are they? The person you think you are is not the person that other people think you are. It comes out in the newspapers all the time. Someone's got a reputation for this, but then we find out, well, it's not quite that. And then the third person that we all are is the person that God knows you are. That's the person that you really are. And that is your character. The person that God knows that you are. And really the challenge of life is what? To get those three persons into one person. That the person that God knows you are is the person that other people see in you, and it's the person that you see in you. And that's a challenge. Probably, I think it's safe to say that all of us have things in our lives that we, in remembering them, hopefully we feel ashamed of. Certainly that's so in my life. I'm glad that's behind me, hopefully, and I learned from it. I don't want that to be the central feature of my character. And the beauty of Jesus is that it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. And so we are building our character. But we ask another question. The process of building character. How do you do that? Well, you sow a thought and reap an action. A lot of people say, well, I didn't mean to do that. Well, you may mean I didn't mean for you to know that I did that. But you don't do things without any mental activity that decides to do something. So, sow a thought, reap an action. Sow an action, reap a habit. In other words, repeated actions create habits. Why do you wake up when you do, habitually? Because that's the way you've been doing it. Why do you like certain foods that you don't like others? Because that's your habit now. That's what you've done. So repeated action, reap a habit. Sow a habit, reap a character. Your character can be described as the collection of your habits. What you habitually do. If your character is given to kindness, you are habitually kind. If your character is given to truth and honesty, you are habitually truthful. That's the way you are, because it's the way you think. And it's the way that you have acted again and again and again. That is your character. And then sow a character, reap a destiny. Who are the people that are going to be in heaven? The people who have developed the character that's like Jesus. The people who haven't are not going to be there. Sow a character, reap a destiny. Look at a couple of passages here that undergird just what I've just said. Do not eat the bread of a selfish man or desire his delicacies. For as he thinks within himself, what is it? So he is. What we think about determines what we become or who we become. Another from Proverbs. Watch over your heart with all diligence, for from it flow the springs of life. When we want to change a habit, what do we have to do? We got to sit down and discover, okay, what is the habit that I want to change? Am I one who habitually is late to everything? I went through a period of my life where I was just habitually late to every appointment. How did I change that? I had to purposely say, okay, the next one I'm going to be at least 5 minutes early. And then the next one. And then the next one. Now, I'm not telling you that I never am absolutely on time every time, but I'm a lot better than I used to be. And so that's the way we break habits. In my youth, I got into the habit of using words I should not use. I knew it, felt bad about it, but they'd slip out because I was mimicking the people around me. I had to purposely decide I'm not going to talk that way. I've got to develop another habit. Now, while we're on that, let me tell you what really worked for me. If you want to change a habit, change the way you talk or whether you're on time or exactly, when you violate that, ask God to forgive you right then. And ask the people around you that hurt you to forgive you. I tell you, it doesn't take long to embarrass yourself 2 or 3 times before you get the message. Man, this needs to change. It worked for me, and I think it'll work for you. All right, then, look at this from Philippians. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure. You see why I highlighted those words? This is the way we think. Whatever is lovely. Am I drawn to the lovely things of life? Or do I fill my mind with these movies or images that describe the ugly side of life? Whatever is of good repute, good reputation. If there's any excellence, and if anything worthy of praise, help me, everybody together. Dwell on these things. Well, we have to determine to do that. That ain't just going to happen. We got to make it our purpose to do that. The things you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, everybody together, practice these things again and again and again and again. Brethren, what is one of the advantages of being regular in your church attendance? Every week you put your mind on something good. Something we need to think about. It should think about. Practice these things. And the God of peace will be with you. All right. Character is eternal. That's the only thing that's going to get out of this world is your character. The person you are. Your spirit. Character is another way to describe your spirit. What you think, what you feel, what you decide. That's your spirit. It's who you are. And that's the only thing that will survive this world and live forever. It is eternal. The Lord spoke about many vocations. He said, behold, the sower went out to sow, but he was not a farmer. Jesus wasn't a farmer. He has said, I am the good shepherd. But Jesus was not a sheep herder. That was not his chosen vocation. Well, what was he? Jesus went out from there and came into his hometown, and his disciples followed him. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue. And the many listeners were astonished. Why? Why were they astonished at this hometown boy preaching to them, talking to them, saying, where did this man get these things? And what is this wisdom given to him? And such miracles of these performed by his hands. Is not this the carpenter, the son of Mary and brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? Are not his sisters here with us? And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and among his own relatives and in his own household. We learn a lot from this short passage. We learn that Jesus was rebuffed or not acceptable in his hometown. Why? It's not what they knew him to be. He was a carpenter. You don't go to Carpenter to tell you how to live your life. You go to him to build something you want to use. And it also testifies that as Jesus grew up in that town, within this family, he wasn't seeing through rocks and he wasn't doing this. He had no reputation for any miracles. What are these things that he's doing? What is he talking about? He's not a rabbi. He's not a schooled man. He's a carpenter. But here he is. If they took offense at him, because for many he was pretending to be someone he was not. They didn't know him. And so they refused him and took offense at him. Jesus was a teacher and a healer, but first, he was a carpenter. During the years that he lived in Nazareth, he worked at a bench as a carpenter. I want to see the working men here. Anybody work for a living? I want to see the blue-collar working men and women who are young. Jesus was just like him. He was not an academic scholar. He was not one of the ones that came from the respected schools of education in their day. He was a working man. He worked with his hands, like his father Joseph. He knew what it was like to work hard all day and come home tired. The next time you come home from a day's work of physical labor or even mental labor and you're tired, I want you to remember, Jesus knows what that's about. He lived that kind of life. He lived in a large family. At least 7 children, and he being the eldest. Where's Joseph? Likely, I have no better explanation than to assume that he died. Well, who now is going to be head of the family and shoulder the responsibility of supporting that large family? Jesus. It possibly explains why he did not begin his public ministry until he was 30 years of age. He had to wait for his younger brothers to get old enough to help support the family. He was a working man. And he could do no miracle there except that he laid his hands on a few sick people and healed them. And he wondered at their unbelief. And he was going around the villages teaching. He wondered at their unbelief. It's always been a very interesting statement to me. The one who made the universe wondered at what? Unbelief. May he never wonder at our unbelief. Why don't they believe in me? Look what I've done for them. Don't they know who I am? He wondered at their unbelief. So let's consider for a few moments Jesus the carpenter, master builder. I want to divide the lesson into these sections: a carpenter's home, work, methods, and death. Now, the reason I do this, because as we work through this sermon, as you hit one of these milestones, this will give you a little hope that this thing's coming to an end eventually. All right, a carpenter's home. Jesus was born into a carpenter's home. Is not this the carpenter's son? They said. They knew Joseph and they knew Jesus. Jesus became a carpenter because his father was a carpenter. This was not expected or accepted by the Jews concerning their Messiah. This was a great stumbling block. Their Messiah would not be a carpenter. He would be a military or soldier or something, not a laborer, not a servant. The Old Testament had predicted a servant, Isaiah 52 and 13 and other passages, suffering servant, but they didn't really understand that or get that. Look at this. Have this attitude in yourselves, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, although he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped. That means held on to. But emptied himself, taking the form of a bondservant and being made in the likeness of men. When Jesus agreed, when he was called the Word, the Son of God, when he accepted the mission of coming to the earth, he gave up some privileges of deity to assume the form of a man and to be treated as a man, but not a high positioned man, a lowly man. The pagans simply could not believe in such a God. A God who would come to earth and live as a servant. He just couldn't understand that. And when they did, it broke their heart. And I want to tell you, brethren, when you finally get it, that the God of heaven, the creator of heaven and earth, came to here and got down on his knees and washed our feet. That's the God we serve. He was a servant. He was a humble servant. And so, a bondservant, made in the likeness of men, being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death of the cross. God did that. The Son of God did that. And so he identified with common people. He identified with us. In Mark 12, verse 37, and the common people heard him gladly. Why? He was like them. He wasn't putting on airs. He wasn't pretending to be something above them. He was one of them. He's one of us. He knew what they were like. He knew what they needed. He knew the dignity of honest labor. He knew what it meant to be tired from working. Common people heard him gladly. There's a Jewish proverb that goes like this: if you do not teach your son to work, you teach him to be a thief. I fear at times, and this is probably a factor of my age. In other words, as you get older, if you mistakenly think it was so much better when you were young, it wasn't in many ways. In fact, today it's better in many ways. But one thing that bothers me, are we teaching our children to work? It's honorable to work. You say, well, I just wouldn't do that job. Well, will it help you pay the bills and maintain your honesty? Then it's honorable work. One of my careers in business was I ran a garbage hauling company. My mother never liked for me to tell people that. That's not what she aspired for her son. But it was honorable work. Necessary work. If you don't believe it, just let them not pick up the garbage. Honorable work. Teaching. Well, Jesus was working. His father taught him to work. All the Jewish fathers taught their sons to work. Even the rabbis had their vocations. Peter, James, and John, what was their work? Fishermen. Matthew was an IRS agent, a tax collector. Luke was a doctor, a physician, and Paul was a tent maker. They could work if they knew the joy of an honest day's work. Jesus came to earth and identified with all of us. He was a carpenter. And therefore, he suffered man's common penalty for sin. What's that? Work. Why is work often hard, laborious, and oftentimes not that rewarding? Go back to Genesis chapter 3 and you'll find out. Because of sin. It's one of the consequences of sin, that the ground was cursed. And it doesn't just automatically cooperate. When the farmer goes out to raise a crop, he just doesn't, okay, throw some seed out there, and then they just pop up. He has to work it. And often, even after working it, it doesn't succeed. Cursed is the ground because of you. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life. God told Adam for his sin. And then further, by the sweat of your face you shall eat bread. It's hard. And then Noah. Now he called Terah, Noah's father. Now he called his name Noah, meaning to rest or comfort, saying, this one shall give us rest from our work and from the toil of our hands arising from the ground which the Lord has cursed. When Noah was born, the reason he was named Noah was because his father said, this is a blessing from God. He has given us a temporary relief from the toil of making a living. It's difficult for us in America to appreciate this. Most people in the world live hand to mouth. That's it. If they don't work that day or that week, they don't eat. As you could tell by looking at me, I could last a little while. And I can see some of you can last for a while too. But we're not going to talk about food or restraining therefrom on the first day of the meeting. But just think about it. I bet we'd have a totally different perspective of this if we were leading, as we said, living hand to mouth. Well, most of the world does that. Well, Noah, they saw, was a respite from that. All right? So we like to say of Jesus, he came under Adam's curse to be a man working on the earth to fulfill Noah's name. Comfort. Remember what the prophet Simeon said when he was brought into the temple at 8 days old? The consolation of Israel. That was prophetic. He's going to give us comfort from the toil of our hands. And I'll tell you, if you want a respite from the toil of your life, get to know Jesus Christ. He will be the comfort that we need. So let's talk about a carpenter's work. It's building and repairing. In Nazareth, I take it he built tables, chairs, farm equipment. And really this word, the Greek word for carpenter or builder, is the word tekna. Much like your first name, Tekla. Tekna, which just meant builder. Well, I've been over to Israel several times, and you know, there isn't a whole lot of lumber lying around. Trees, there's a lot of rock. So likely Jesus was a stonemason as well. They could build things, and there were cities close by where likely he and his father and probably his brothers toiled. Well, but before time, what did he build? The universe. I mean, that just blows my mind. Here is the person who built the universe, and now he's working at this stage of his existence in a little hamlet called Nazareth. And the only reason Nazareth's name is on the map is because he was born there. And he's building tables and chairs or building a wall, whatever. What humility. All things came into being through him, and apart from him nothing came into being that has come into being. He's the builder, the master builder of everything. And then today, what is he building? He's building our lives. My life, your life. He's a builder. Building it by building our character. The way we think, the way we act, the way we habitually act, which becomes our character. I'm telling you, if you're not noted for your kindness, you could change that. If you're not noted for your truthfulness, you can change that through the power of Jesus Christ. There's no reason for anyone to say, well, that's just the way I am. I just don't tell the truth that much. Or, I'm just not a kind person. I'm just not a humble person. You can become that with the power of the master builder. You also, as living stones, are being built up as a spiritual house. Each one of us, a living stone, built into the temple of God's worship here upon earth, as collectively we worship him. For a holy priesthood, that means every one of us is a holy priest. To do what? To offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Christ. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they might have life and might have it abundantly. Whatever problem you want to identify in this world that's a real problem, let's take racism. I enjoy the fact that we've got red and yellow, black and white. I don't know if we got any yellow here, but we got black and white, and maybe even some red. I don't know. Got any Indians? I've never known why they said that their skin was red. I have not seen that. We have several Asians in our congregation. And I asked them, I said, why did they call y'all yellow? And they said, well, it just kind of looks that way or something. So they weren't offended. But in God's kingdom, we're all in it. All in it. What's the cure to racism? Jesus Christ. Because why? Being a racist is sinful. You're going to go to hell if you're a racist. I don't care from what color you are. And I'm a older man, who grew up in southeast Texas. And I probably don't have to give you a history lesson of what I grew up in. I never went to school ever throughout college with anyone a person of color. I'm glad that's gone. We never had people in our church. You got a white church, got a black church. You got a Hispanic church. In our church is Sugar Land, Hispanics, Asians, black, white, and we got mixed too. That's okay too. That's the power of Jesus Christ. And all the politicians and all the pundits, you can put them all together and they will never solve that problem until people's hearts are changed. To learn to love people because they're a creation of God. That's what he does for us. All right, further, many listeners were astonished, saying, where did this man get these things? And what is this wisdom given to him? And such miracles as these performed by his hands. And look at the highlight. He wondered at their unbelief. Wondered. Jesus wants to build our lives. The only question is, will we let him? Will we let him build our lives? And then the carpenter's methods. It's our third category. What kind of methods does a carpenter use? The carpenter's methods. Well, he's got to have vision. The ability to see what can be, not just what is. I don't have it when it comes to carpentry. My next door neighbor was German, Polish, and he was at the Russian concentration camp during World War II. He was a young man. He learned carpentry there. Got to Canada and finally got into heaven there in Texas. Yes. I do that every now and then, just see if you're listening, okay? Well, he came down and he became my next door neighbor, and I got to know him, and he got laid off from work as a carpenter, and so I hired him. I had some remodeling to do in the house, so I hired him. And I was just amazed. He was talking Polish, German, English. He was just figuring it all out. He could see it before he even built it. I couldn't. But he could. You know, Jesus sees what you can be right now. Not just what you are, but what you could become. And I love that song, In His Time, where a phrase of it, in essence, means he's still working on me. In his time, he has the vision to see what we can be. Look at Simon Peter. We're going to talk about him on Thursday night. Got our brother Simon down here. I've been telling him he's got to be, we're going to talk about him on Thursday night. Simon Peter. Jesus looked at him and said, you are Simon, the son of John. You shall be called Cephas, which translated means Peter, rock, or stone. I wonder if his friends who were standing around heard that, just kind of, him? He's going to be a rock, like a rock? That guy's all over the map. He's impetuous. When he doesn't know what to say, he starts talking. Jesus said, I'm going to make you into a rock, Peter. What about Saul of Tarsus? He hated Gentiles. He was of the strictest order of the Pharisees. Pharisee, according to the strictest sect of our religion. He hated non-Jewish people, Gentiles. Further, he hated Christians. He said, I had to do many things hostile to the name of Jesus of Nazareth. Skipping to verse 10. I locked up many of their saints in prisons when they were being put to death. I cast my vote against them. I punished them often in the synagogues. What did Jesus see in Saul of Tarsus? He saw the apostle to the Gentiles. No wonder the Jews wanted to kill Paul. He was a living testimony to the veracity of Jesus Christ and the power of I mean, how do you explain Saul of Tarsus other than he saw him? You can't. If they could, so the only thing was to kill him. And Saul of Tarsus lived the rest of his life under the threat of death. Ultimately, they got the Romans to do it. That's what Jesus used this man as the apostle to the Gentiles. Just read a little bit. To open their eyes so that they may turn from darkness to light and from the dominion of Satan to God, in order that they may receive forgiveness of sins and inheritance among those who have been sanctified by faith in me. Jesus has a vision for us. Will we let him make us into a beautiful, loving servant? Will we? I love this little poem. He believes in me. Sometimes I feel just like a stranger, without a friend or place to call my home. But in my heart, I know there's someone who believes, and he believes in me. I know his love. I feel his mercy. I hear his voice like thunder on the sea. Still, he's the one who made our spirits to be free. And he believes in me. He believes in me. I know he believes in me. That gives me the courage to be what I must be. And he believes in me. That's the carpenter, the master builder. But also, not only does he have the vision, he finishes what he starts. If we allow him, he will never leave his work unfinished. But we all, with unveiled face, beholding as in a mirror the glory of the Lord, and being transformed into the same image from glory to glory, just as from the Lord the Spirit, working every day, every week, every year, to make us what we need to be. From Philippians 1:6. For I am confident of this very thing, Paul writes to them. It says that he who began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of Christ Jesus. I want to see the hands of the people that Jesus has already begun his work in them. Anybody? Keep them up. He's going to perfect you. He isn't going to stop until you are complete. He doesn't mean sinless perfection in that absolute sense. It means to fulfill your mission, your purpose of being here in the world. And then, so then, my beloved, just as you have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who is at work in you, both to will and to work for his good pleasure. Sometimes I don't do as good as I could because I just don't want to. Am I the only man in the house that feels that way? But if I will yield my spirit to the Lord, he'll give me both the motivation, the will, and teach me what to do. The work. He knows just when and how to finish his workmanship. Sometimes planing, then sanding or polishing. Just when to use his word, his world, or us, his people. He's that kind of a builder. And then lastly, the carpenter's death. He was nailed to a tree. The kind of tree that he would have gone out to wherever he could find it, cut it down, planed it off, and used it to build something. He was nailed to a tree. A carpenter was nailed to a tree. And he himself bore our sins in his body on the cross, literally the wood, the tree. I think that's put there for a purpose, to remind us of the circle and cycle of his life. Further, that we might eat of the tree of life. All this imagery you see comes to bear in our psyche to understand the greatness of his work and how valuable we are to him, that we might eat of the tree of life. To him who overcomes, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. Blessed are those who wash their robes, that they may have the right to the tree of life and may enter by the gates into the city. You ready? When you think of Jesus the carpenter, remember the price he paid to make something beautiful of our lives. Thank you for listening.